What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and welcome back to another team building video. This one is going to be for Jerry, coach of the Californian Cubones. Yes, we're going to be playing him for the playoffs. As a quick little update, we actually managed to snag the very first seed. We came in first place in the regular season because Noah lost to Bobby, coach of the Malvern Mimikyu, who was, I think, our first match. But regardless, that pretty much determined whether or not we were going to play Sam or Jerry for our first playoff match, and well, our really only playoff match, and then potentially the championship or go home. So it's kind of like the do or die moment, which is pretty intense. And I've gone over his team before, although it was relatively earlier on the season. I didn't know the metagame as well. I didn't understand the new mons as well. I didn't understand my own mons as well. So I do feel like I'm going with a slightly different perspective. And believe me, the pressure is on. And this week has been really tough. Regardless, let's get into his team. First of all, first and foremost, is Tapu Lele. This thing is a monster. It's banned. It's banned from the NCPL. It's too good. It's too good for League format. There aren't enough counters to it. Last time I brought Drapion to try and beat this thing because I absolutely needed some sort of switch into it. And I didn't want to give up Scizor for that. I wanted a Dark type so that this thing couldn't just be choice locked and spam a Psychic type move, just like destroy my whole team. It can run Life Orb, it can run Psychium Z, it can run a Twisted Spoon, it can run Scarf, Specs. Specs just hits so hard. Scarf, it's got a decent speed tier as well, so like this thing is really good. I can't stress that enough, and it's easily the centralizing piece of team building this week. The next mon he's got is Excadrill. Now another great offensive threat on the physical side. Look at that attack stat. It also hits a decent speed tier, making it a wonderful Scarf user. It could be Sandstorm, Sandrush. That's also a possibility. It could be a Rocker, more defensive build, but really it's more of an offensive threat than anything else. Next up is Volcanion. Again, really bulky, big offensive packing powerhouse. Look at that bulk, 80, 120, 90. And again, it hits a great Scarf speed tier, and it's got great move pool coverage and great typing. It's got a lot of incredible resistances, and it tanks hit super well, in addition to being a water immunity. So yeah, this thing is scary. All of his A tier picks, all of his OU picks, just bring so much power to the table. It's scary. It's so scary. And then the next one he's got is Mega Aerodactyl, hitting that insane base 150 speed tier, and of course having base 135 attack, nothing to sleep on for sure, and getting access to some decent stabs in Stone Edge and Aerial Ace. And yeah, this thing is pretty bulky. I'm not too worried about it overall, given I have Mega Scizor and some other mons that hit it super effectively. That said, it does at least require me, or push me to bring some Scarfers. Next up is Tornadus. Now, this is actually one of the bigger threats to my team that he's running. It hits a really great speed tier, so it outspeeds a lot of my mons, especially the ones that are relevant to beating it. It's got decent special attack stat, but it's also got access to Hurricane, Air Slash, Focus Blast, some really great moves, and with a Life Orb or Specs on it, it hits super hard. And Prankster, it can set up stuff like Tailwind like he did in the last time we played, which is really scary. And yeah, if he brings a Scarf Tornadus, that is super scary. Pretty much any of his offensive threats, if he brings enough Scarfers, he'll be able to beat down my team, I believe, which is scary. The next one he's got is Lycanroc. Now, Lycanroc, I don't know if I really anticipate it. It's good. It's a good kind of like hyper offense lead stealth rocker. It's got access to taunt, which is really important too, and it's got decent attack stat. It's got priority and Accelerock as well. So I don't really know. I don't really know if he's gonna bring it or not. Next up is Scrafty, and this thing is so versatile. I drafted it for the NCPL. I'm really excited to use it. It's got so much versatility. Dragon Dance, Bulk Up, Sleep Talk, AV. It's got great stats. Distributed bulk and not a bad attack stat, especially given that it has boosting moves for it. So yeah, that said, all of my main mons beat this thing down, whether it's Tapu Fini, Mega Scizor, Infernape, or even Circuitry because it gets Dazzling Gleam. Gengar also gets Dazzling Gleam, so a lot of my top mons can beat this thing, so I don't know if he's actually going to bring it. Next up is Electros. Now, Electros actually gave me a bit of difficulty last time. I actually misjudged it as a Choice Banded Electros. It was actually Choice Scarf, and I looked back on the replay and I was like, what was I thinking? But this thing hits hard, it gets great move pool coverage, it has no super effective weaknesses because it has Levitate, so unless you have Mold Breaker, of course you can't hit it super effectively, which means it's pretty difficult to KO, and for a hyper-offensive team like mine, that means I have to have a Mon that can take it out while also taking hits, which doesn't really happen very often on hyper-offense, so this thing is actually pretty problematic for my team. Next up is Slowking. Slowking, I don't know, it's got good bulk, of course, and it's got great ability and Regenerator. Doesn't pose too much of an offensive threat, especially given I have Tapu Fini, so not too worried about it. And then we got Golisopod. Now, I did not have something for Golisopod last time. This thing, it hits so hard. It hits so hard. It's also got great priority in First Impression and Aqua Jet and Sucker Punch. It can also run Spikes, and of course, it hits super hard with Liquidation, which seems like it always gets defense drops. So I definitely thought a little bit more about Golisopod. I didn't really know that what Golisopod was capable of doing the first time I played Jerry. And then next up is Garbodor, your waifu. I love this Pokemon. I really hope he doesn't bring it. Hazards would be such a hassle for my team, especially given his good priority and his good Scarf users. I really hope Garbodor doesn't show up, and I don't really have a lot of great answers. I don't really have an incredibly strong ground type. I mean, I have Flygon, but that doesn't do super well against the rest of his team. Doesn't get a chance to set up, really, and I don't have a strong Psychic type, so I don't really have a lot to hit Garbodor with, and I don't want to waste time having to remove hazards, especially if I'm trying to set them up too. And then he's got Lurantis. Lurantis is not that great. It's really not. Its main draw is Contrary, Leaf Storm, but coming off a not so great special attack stat and having to take hits, and given I have, you know, something like Circuitry with Signal Beam, or Gengar with Sludge Wave, or Infernape with, I don't know, any of its fire attacks, I don't really expect this thing to be showing up to the match. And then lastly is Unknown. I can't even believe he brought Unknown last time. This thing only runs like Specs or Scarf, Hidden Power, Psychic, Modest, because that's all it really can do. I'm not really afraid of Unknown. As I said last time, apparently I slept on Unknown last time, but no, I'm not too afraid of Unknown, really. So, what did I bring this week? The first thing I decided to bring was, okay, what can I do to beat Lele? What can I do to beat Lele? And my answer was Mega Scizor. Now, you're looking at this set, and there is so much bulk. There is so much SPDEF investment. I really wanted to make Mega Scizor a Lele counter. I do kind of force him to bring Hidden Power Fire. If he doesn't bring Hidden Power Fire, I definitely just wall Tapu Lele. I take some interesting calcs. I take 98.5% from a Choice Specs Hidden Power Fire from, I believe, Modest Tapu Lele. So this is a really bulky Mega Scizor. And so just about any sort of Mega Scizor, or any Tapu Lele I can take on. I believe I still can roost off damage from a Specs Psychic. I can definitely take on Scarf Tapu Lele super well. I can roost off the damage. I can outstall Psychic terrains so that I can eventually get a Bullet Punch off, and his attacks do less, or his Psychic will do less, meaning I can sponge hits better, I can recover more carefully. Obviously, I do need to worry about SPDEF drops and crits, which is something I'm not really looking to do, but regardless, if Psychic terrain runs out, Bullet Punch I can do a ton of damage to Tapu Lele with. U-Turn will still do a ton of damage, even without any attack investment. To Tapu Lele. It'll also be really helpful for getting momentum, because if he is locked into it, if he's like Twisted Spoon, maybe he doesn't have Hidden Power Fire, something like that, he's going to want to switch out, and U-Turn will be really helpful for maintaining momentum. Also, this thing could be really helpful for late game sweeping with SD. I could pressure things to switch out. For example, with SD, I could set up on Tapu Lele if it's Scarf. And once things have been weakened a little bit by some of my other team members, like I said, SD, Bullet Punch can potentially sweep, and, you know, rather than maybe U-turn sometimes, I can roost to heal this thing up in case Tapu Lele is still alive and I need this thing to be a switch-in. I believe this is a switch-in to Specs Psychic, Specs Modest Psychic, even when rocks are up. So Mega Scizor is really important, but like I said, I do need to be careful about Hidden Power Fire. The defense is there, because I didn't need any more SPDEF to live relevant calcs from Tapu Lele, and the defense is there to better help out with Excadrill, because Excadrill is also a monster, and Mega Scizzor's typing is really great for taking that thing on. So I believe a Life Orb Excadrill does 45% max with Earthquake, so I can switch in and I can roost off damage and take that thing on 1v1. Even if it has SD, I can U-turn out of there and get some good damage off into some of my other mons. It'll be complicated, but this is one of my very few switch-ins and potential late game sweepers. So, the next member we have on our team is Tapu Fini. Now, I didn't bring Tapu Fini around last time. It's max defense with a little bit of Spadef, because leftover EVs pretty much. And this thing is pretty much here to help take on his physical attackers, as you'd expect. Particularly Excadrill, we can take on Iron Heads and Earthquakes. We don't get to it KO'd. We do a ton back with Surf. Obviously, we don't have as much, we don't have reliable recovery like Scizor does. So that's why if he brings, both Scarf, Lele, and Excadrill, or Specs Lele, or Bandit Excadrill, it is possible to wear down Mega Scizor, and there is a lot of defensive pressure on Mega Scizor this week, which is scary, but this thing can help out with that. It's also really helpful for Volcanion, to keep it from going for Fire Blast and Steam Eruptions super easily, if it's Specs or Scarf, which is very possible. And yeah, I actually beat Specs Volcanion 1v1, even though we have no, close to no Spadef investment. I believe Specs Modest Volcanion Steam Eruption does 40% max, meaning we can actually outstall it with Protect and Moonblast and use up all of its Steam Eruption PP, which is kind of crazy. We've got Surf to hit, the relevant mons hard, Mega Aerodactyl, even Tornado, or not Tornadoes, Lycanroc, what else? Excadrill, and then Moonblast to hit pretty much everything else. Defog is there in case he does bring Golisopod with spikes, or Garbutter with spikes and T-spikes, or Lycanroc, because this is a really good answer to Lycanroc as a lead. This is also one of my few switch-ins to Tornadus. It takes Hurricane / Air Slash really well. Tornadus also gets Heat Wave, which is why Mega Scizor isn't really an answer for Torn. So if he does bring Torn, I do need to keep this thing relatively healthy. And yeah, that's about all there is really to it. Protect is also really helpful for getting a little bit of passive recovery, because this thing doesn't really get great recovery. But it's also really helpful because I can stall out Psychic Terrain potentially if Tapu Lele does switch in. And I can also use Tapu Fini to get rid of Psychic Terrain, meaning some of my mons would be able to take Psychics better if, Psychic Terrain goes away. It means I do threaten Tapu Lele out with Bullet Punches once, if I have to sack Tapu Fini or something like that. So yeah, it gives me a contender, a battler, a soldier in the terrain war. So that's Tapu Fini. The next one we got is Circuitry. Now, I really like Circuitry in this matchup. The only thing holding me back is Excadrill. I think if you watched the first match I had with Jerry, you'll definitely remember that Excadrill was such a pain for Circuitry to deal with, because I couldn't just straight up Thunderbolt until that thing was gone. Thunderbolt does so much damage to everything on his team. It's super helpful for getting a lot of damage off on Lele. Even Energy Ball does around 50 to Excadrill, which is really helpful for potentially late game sweep. But Thunderbolt is one of my few ways of dealing with Volcanion really well. It deals with Mega Aerodactyl pretty well. It deals with Tornadus really well. It even hits Lycanroc super hard. It can hit Scrafty with Dazzling Gleam. It can get momentum with Volt Switch on just about anything. It KOs Golisopod. This thing hits so much of his team so hard, and it's really helpful for momentum as well, just once Excadrill is gone. So yeah, I'm going to have to play around that. I might have to play aggressively. He might know that he has Excadrill, so I might be hesitant to go for something like Volt Switch, but I might have to Volt Switch anyways, knowing that he might know that I know that he can go into it, and instead not go into it so that he can maintain momentum or something like that. So it could get into some pretty intense mind games with Circuitry. But regardless, getting into the EVs, it's pretty straightforward. Max special attack so that we hit as hard as possible. The speed is there so that we outspeed a Scarf Modest Tapu Lele, because Tapu Lele will hit 317 speed and 289 speed if Modest, and we hit 290 speed with this spread. So yeah. Next mon is Infernape. Yes, another choice Scarf user. We're bringing double Scarf this week. I was super torn between the next member being Scarfed and this member being Scarfed, but I ended up deciding on Infernape because I really like the U-turn momentum, and it hits so much of his team hard. We have just enough speed to outspeed Scarf Tapu Lele, which is, or Scarf Timid Tapu Lele, which is like the only real relevant thing in Infernape's speed tier. And that means we get to invest a ton in attack, and then we also get defense. I didn't invest in HP because we don't really need, we're already at a Stealth Rock number, and the only hits I actually plan on taking with Infernape are potentially First Impression or Aqua Jets from Golisopod, and it's more worthwhile to invest directly in the particular stat rather than HP. You'll take slightly less damage. So that's why all that defense investment is there. Flare Blitz is there because it does 75%, I believe, min to, or maybe max, around 75% to Tapu Lele. It OHKOs Excadrill. Close combat to it KOs Volcanion, unless it's really bulky, of course. Close combat does a ton to Mega Aerodactyl. Flare Blitz does 75% min to Tornadus. Close combat OHKOs Lycanroc. Close combat, depending on the spread, does a ton to Scrafty. Close combat does a lot to Electros. U-turn is really good for getting out of there against Slowking while doing a decent amount of damage. Flare Blitz 2 KOs Golisopod, and Earthquake is there to hit Garbodor, which is really important as well. Flare Blitz does a ton to Lurantis. U-turn does a lot to Unknown. So this thing can hit his team super hard, and a lot of my end game will probably surround getting a Flare Blitz sweep late game, and which is also why like getting up rocks is gonna be really important to weed down the few things that are resistant to that fire type attack, which is Mega Aerodactyl, which is Lycanroc potentially, which is Volcanion, which is a big potential resistance to it, and weakening some of his bulkier mons like Scrafty and Electros and Garbodor. I don't want to have to try to beat that thing down with Flare Blitzes. But if I have to, I will. So yeah, that's Infernape's role. It's going to scare out a lot of things. It could potentially U-turn into Flare Blitz KOs Tapu Lele, so if necessary, I can just get away with sacking one Mon, and then probably get 2 or 3 on just Scarf Flare Blitz. So yeah, we're running Blaze because there's nothing that's boosted by Iron Fist, and we could potentially get one last nuke of a Flare Blitz off if we're barely living. So yeah, Infernape brings a lot of heat to this matchup. And then the next one we got is Gengar. As I said, I was thinking about running Scarf Gengar, but I decided not to because without the Scarf, it can still outspeed max speed Tapu Lele just barely, even with a modest nature, meaning we're still hitting really hard and we're outspeeding everything relevant to Gengar outspeeding because Tornadus I has, I believe, 1 point higher base speed in speed, so it can outspeed Gengar regardless, and same goes for Lycanroc Day. It's got 2 base or 2 points of like base speed higher. So what are we trying to do with this? Max special attack, speed to outspeed what I just said, and the coverage moves. That's all it really is. Shadow Ball and Sludge Wave. They both hit Tapu Lele really hard. Sludge Wave obviously harder, and OHKO is Tapu Lele, I believe, unless it has some decent bulk investment. It would need a lot of bulk investment actually to survive the Sludge Wave, but regardless, Excadrill gets 2-hit KO'd by Shadow Ball. Volcanion, I think it gets OHKO'd by Thunderbolt after rocks. Mega Aerodactyl gets KO'd by Thunderbolt. Tornadus I gets KO'd by Thunderbolt. Lycanroc Day gets 2-hit KO'd by Shadow Ball. Scrafty, depends on the set. A Max Spadef Assault Vest, Max HP, Max Spadef Assault Vest Scrafty takes 55% from a Dazzling Gleam. How crazy is that? ×4 super effective from a modest max special attack Expert Belt Gengar. 55% max. But yeah, depending on the spread, depending on chip damage and such, we do a lot with the Dazzling Gleam to Scrafty. Sludge Wave 2-hit KOs Electros unless it's Assault Vest. Shadow Ball hits Slowking really hard. Sludge Wave 2-hit KOs Golisopod. It puts it in emergency exit range, which is really nice. And we take First Impression. We take 2 Aqua Jets, which is partially why I'm running Expert Belt and not Life Orb. I didn't want to put myself in KO range of his priority users, whether it's Lycanroc or Golisopod in particular. And Shadow Ball does a lot to Garbodor at 2 KOs, and that's one of my few ways of actually taking down Garbodor. There's the Earthquake with Infernape, there's potentially Thunderbolts just smacking it with Xurkitree, but there's also Shadow Balls from Gengar, and of course it does what you'd expect to Lurantis and Unknown. And yeah, this thing also just hits really hard. Again, it's not really taking very many hits. It takes a First Impression, it takes some priority, and you'll notice a lot of my Mons, they just don't outspeed stuff like Tornadus and Lycanroc. So if he does bring offensive Tornadus, offensive Lycanroc, they're probably going to pick up at least 1 kill each time they're given momentum, which is really scary. And so the last mon, as you might expect, I need a stealth rocker. So did I pick Drudagon? Did I pick Diancie? Did I pick Omastar? You let me know. It's not in front of, it is actually Omastar. We got a really heat Omastar set this week. I really had the most fun, probably, developing this set. So running Sash Omastar, we're, very hyper offense. I mentioned that there are a lot of relevant calcs, or dependent calcs, surrounding Stealth Rocks being up. I mean, after 2 Stealth Rock switch-ins, Tapu Lele dies to a Flare Blitz. Stealth Rock and Spike would help wear down like Volcanion, Excadrill. So that little bit of chip damage over time will help out my Scarf users so much. So having hazards this week is really important, especially given his only hazard removal is Excadrill with Spin and Mega Aerodactyl with Defog, which is probably not what you're looking to go for. So yeah, so we're running Stealth Rock and Spikes, and then our attacks are Surf and Earth Power to hit relevant things. I was considering HP Electric over Earth Power for more coverage, but I really would, anything I would hit with HP Electric, I just need to hit with Surf to put it in range of other like Scarfmon's attacks anyways, and Earth Power hits things like Volcanion a lot harder, which is something I needed more, or like better coverage for, and same goes for Garbodor. Earth Power 2 KOs it after Rocks, so yeah, that's why that's there, and that's modest special, max special, or not max special attack, 120 special attack EVs is so that we 2 KO Garbodor and so that we do as much damage as we can to help set up for our other Mons. But special attack was actually kind of like the dump into, what's it called, stat after I set up some other things. So the very peculiar HP and SPDEF investment, it's actually incredibly specific. So 248 HP and 88 SPDEF allows me to live any, allows me to scout Tapu Lele super well. So if Omastar is in against Tapu Lele, and Tapu Lele does not have a damage boosting item, so it either has, I don't know, like Mental Herb or Psyche MZ or a Choice Scarf, if it is timid, it will do like I think 93 or 94% max with a Psychic. If it is modest, it will do 98.5% or 98.8% max, which will leave me with 4 HP, so it won't bring me down to my Sash. So I can scout for whether or not he's modest or timid and whether or not he has a damage boosting item right away. If he does bring me to my Sash, he must have some sort of damage boosting item, whether it's a Life Orb, which I would see the recoil, or Twisted Spoon or Choice Specs. But then I would know that he's not Choice Scarf. I would know that he's not a non-damage boosting item, which would really help out with my playing for the rest of the game. That sort of information is crucial. And so that's like the main goal there with Tapu Lele. Now, the other scouting I'm using this for is Excadrill. I have just enough speed so that after I get hit by an attack from Excadrill, whether it's an Iron Head, an Earthquake, Rapid Spin, I live it because of my Sash, and I get double speed because of weak armor, and I will just outspeed a max speed Excadrill by 3 points. 3 points? 2 points, I think. Meaning I can scout to see if he Scarf Excadrill or not, because like I said, if he brings Scarf Lele, Scarf Volcanion, Scarf Excadrill, I absolutely need to know that as soon as possible, because that heavily determines how I play with the rest of the team. So that's why that speed, SPDEF, HP are there. The special attack was just to 2-hit KO Garbodor, and then I dumped the remaining EVs into special attack just to solidify things, to do more damage, to help set up with other Mons. But again, this thing's primary goal is going to be to scout and to get up Stealth Rock, and then potentially Spikes, potentially Surf or Earth Power, depending on what's in against me and whether or not I need to damage that. If Volcanion is in against me, there's no way I'm getting up a Spike. I'm going to go for an Earth Power right away and weaken that thing, because that thing is such a huge threat to my team. But like, I don't know, if Slowking is in against me, there's no way I'm going to go for like Surf or Earth Power against that when I can just get up a Spike, which will in the long run do so much more damage. But yeah, so that's the team. It's scary. It's scary. This week is going to be really difficult. I really do think we have a bad matchup against Jerry's team. So I'm not super confident. I know that if I play well, I can do it with this team. This team is probably the best I can do. I look back at my previous team, and it's obviously different. It's obviously a lot different. I feel like I have a better understanding of the matchup and my own team a lot better. And hopefully this team can pull it through. I don't like battling Jerry in general because he's pretty unpredictable. I can't always rely on him making the best move all the time, meaning sometimes he plays like he's predicting me or trying to make a hard read or something like that, and then sometimes he just goes for a ridiculous play that might end up working because it is ridiculous, yet at the same time leaves him relatively unpredictable. And as I've mentioned every single time I make a video for the SFL, that's really difficult for hyper offense. But hopefully we can pull through. Please do check out the battle. It should be an intense one. It might be a really quick one depending on how things go. But until then, this has been Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.